What's going on, everybody? Today we've got one of our weekly chores, which is rotating the goats and the sheep. We've had them rotating through our horse pasture here for the last month or so, kind of getting a lot of the weeds down, cleaning the fence lines, also eating up grass so our horses don't get too fat. So what we're doing today, we're going to start moving them back towards our front pasture where we have our laying hens rotated, because that pasture area needs to be cut down and maintained a little bit. And I'm about to step through a fence, so it's gonna look a little weird. Oh. So we're moving them through today without putting the horses up. So we're gonna see how that goes. The horses usually get pretty stirred up when I drive the truck in here, because what we do, we got to take down all our electric fencing that we have set up to keep them centered in a specific area. You can kind of see this is where they've been for the past week, and typically, depending on the amount of how many animals we have in a certain fence section when we're rotating them through, but also the size of the pasture we have sectioned off, we typically keep our goats and sheep in one section for a week. That way it gets nice and eaten down and mowed down, which you can clearly see kind of the lines of where they've been eating and where the fresh pasture is. So we usually move them to a different section each week. Sometimes maybe a little bit longer if the amount of animals inside decreases or what that looks like. But we're moving them into the little horse paddock dry lot area. So we need them to eat that grass down so we can lock our horses up in there and not worry about them overeating, especially during the summertime going into fall where the grass gets really green and lush. We don't want them getting too fat and foundering. So we use our goats and the sheep to maintain not only the grass, but also the soil, because all this will green back up really quick. In fact, you can kind of see, all right, you can see where they've been eating this week, this kind of brownish green, and they were actually in this area behind me last week, and you can kind of see this already greened back up and thickened up. So they're our maintenance crew, our soil crew, because especially in case you didn't know this, goats and sheep, their manure slow releases nitrogen to where, like chicken manure, poultry manure, even cow and horse manure, it releases nutrients and nitrogen and different things pretty quickly into the ground. But goats and sheep, because of their pelleted form manure, slow releases that stuff, slow releases that nitrogen and nutrients, so it actually can carry out and give nutrients to the grass and the soil over a longer period of time. So we use that to our advantage as well, especially within our pasture systems. But we take down our electric fence. You can kind of see me probably in the video. I have a black pan with me. This is the only time we feed our goats and sheep any type of grain. Mainly the only reason I do that is because it gets them moving quicker. Less time, especially if I'm moving them in here with horses. Sometimes horses get spooked over different things and may accidentally kick one of them because our goats are fainting goats. So if the horses spook them, the goats fall over, and then that just creates a problem for them. So I use that feed to kind of keep them moving quicker, get them from A to B as fast as possible. Then I come in, I hook up their shade shelter. You can see it kind of butterflies in and out with those shade lean-tos. We fold those up, hook it up to the back of the truck, and move it to the next spot. But it's also light enough to where if I just need to pull it a shorter distance, I can do it by hand too. Using the truck just makes things go a little bit easier and quicker. But yeah, they'll be in that horse paddock area, and I even fenced out a little section. You can kind of see it in the background, maybe back there. Fenced out a little section outside the paddock, and they'll eat there for about a week, and I'll then move them into the next section of pasture and start eating those sections down that the chickens have already been through about a month ago. So we'll kind of start that cycle again of running the goats and sheep through first, then circling the chickens back behind them. So again, we're not egg farmers, we're not chicken farmers. First and foremost, we're grass and soil farmers, because everything starts and ends with your soil. But that's about it. One frustrating thing about pasture rotation, obviously it takes some time, it's hard to work on you, but again, we never have to buy any fertilizers, we don't have to spread anything, we let the animals do the work. So moving the fence can kind of be a little bit tedious, but worth it. But the worst part of it is where we have our solar chargers hooked up. I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not. We have a ground rod in the ground, and it never fails. Even though I try to sink them in as loosely as possible, but also deep enough to take that ground charge, they always get stuck. So now I have to use a big old tampon post to try to leverage this thing out. So now it's on to the next job. And just in case you were wondering about the type of solar charger we use, we've had some pretty good luck with these. I guess you'd pronounce them Parmac solar chargers. Actually do a really good job. I would definitely suggest going on the bigger end. Get the SolarPack 12. We started off with the 6 and it just wasn't pumping out the right amount of voltage for us. So we had to go back and exchange it. So one thing I've learned with any type of farm equipment, go ahead and get a step up above of what you think you need, and then you'll probably end up having exactly what you need. So like I talked about with my ground rod that can be a pain sometimes, you need to make sure you sink these into the ground enough to where it carries the charge down deep enough, and so you can get down to where there's always moisture in the ground, because if these dry out, then your voltage goes down on your fence line and it won't give you the right amount of pop you need. So sink these down deep enough to where it's always in more moist soil, but not too deep to where it's a pain in the butt to get them out. So when I sink these in, I always kind of wiggle them around a little bit to create a little bit of a hole that should make them a little bit easier to pull out. Plus, having this little hole around it, if it does dry out, if you do go through a dry spell, you can pour water down into the hole, and it will get your voltage back up. So I always kind of work it down, wiggle it, pull it out with each little section I go in. Again, the reason why I do that is so I can hopefully keep it from getting stuck, and I can just pull it out by hand like that. But sometimes when it rains a lot, it'll make them get stuck in there. See, this one's getting a little stuck now. All right, so I'll work it in. I'll probably go one more section. I usually get it down to about leveled where the electrode comes off. So then I'll slide my ground wire through. And I'll always have these chargers facing kind of south. Well, depending on the year or time of year, facing the pattern and the path of the sun, so it can get a good charge. Which even on cloudy days, these can hold a charge for I think it's 20 days. Could be wrong. Could just be weak. I can't remember. I tighten that down. Then hook our positive end up to our metal part on the cable. Turn it on, make sure it's in the green. There you go. As long as it's clicking in the green, I'll come back through, and I have a voltage meter that I'll stick on the wire to make sure that it's kicking enough power out. And if it's not, usually it's just grounded out somewhere because of the high grass, or maybe something metal from our hardline fence is touching the electric wire. So you always got to be flexible and be ready to do some electrical work. So again, that's just a little bit about our solar chargers. If you have any other info about solar chargers and how they work for you, because the only bad thing about this one is it's not extremely mobile. It's pretty heavy, so we may look for something different as we start moving animals further and further away from our house. So let me know in the comments what kind of electric charger y'all use. But see you next time.